Greetings, Star Warrior.
Today we're going to be discussing the recent news with Star Wars The Clone Wars, and today I have a special guest joining me on the channel. His name is Neil Allen from the YouTube channel Neil Allen.
I'm also the creator of the comic series Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, which you can find at zatswan.com. And my channel is mostly about comic book related news and other things.
Yes, so since you're very strongly comic book related, I think my audience would like to know what your current standing is with Disney, Lucasfilm, and Star Wars in general.
You know, I really don't read Star Wars comic books very often, so I really can't tell you specifically. I don't really have an opinion on their comic books. I don't think you were just asking about that, but since you brought up the comic book thing. As for, in general, what I feel about Disney and Lucasfilm, I don't enjoy what they've been doing. I actually have a video on my channel where I get across my feelings about The Last Jedi, and I don't really think I had anything positive to say. I was really looking forward to that movie. It's not often I was as hyped for stuff as I was for that movie. That doesn't happen a lot. And unfortunately, it was possibly the biggest disappointment I've ever had regarding entertainment. I walked away from the film feeling very strange. I haven't been interested in any of their side stories like Solo and Rogue One. I don't even think those films should have been made. And I just haven't really been that interested in seeing what Disney or Lucasfilm will do going forward. They've kind of disinterested me as far as Star Wars goes, which is interesting because, like I said, I went into The Force Awakens. I went into The Last Jedi pumped more than I'd ever been, nearly, and walked out of it with the least interest in Star Wars I've ever had. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
So I'm sure you can relate strongly with my audience. Just to
Probably.
Just to clarify, you are historically a fan of Star Wars.
Yep, I've been a big fan of Star Wars since the 90s.
And would you consider yourself a boycotter of the recent Solo Star Wars story film?
I guess so. I did not see the film. Like I said, with those side stories, I just wasn't interested. To tell you the truth, I haven't seen Rogue One either, except for in bits and pieces. And that was before I was really upset by what they were doing. I just wasn't interested. So I didn't go to see it. I didn't think the film should have been made. I didn't agree with Disney milking Star Wars with these B stories. And I didn't know the characters. I didn't care. So I didn't watch the film. As far as Solo goes, I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't care how it sounds. At first, it was the same thing with Solo. I just wasn't interested, so I wasn't going to watch it. But then when I hear news about Lando being changed into a pansexual and what that entails, and that he has some kind of romantic relationship with his non-human whatsoever looking droid, as I understand it, then I became very disturbed. And like I said, I don't care how that sounds. That wasn't the character, and I didn't see the point, and I thought it was character assassination, to tell you the truth.
Right. They never would have pulled that with Han Solo.
No, obviously, because they didn't. You know, they had the chance to.
Because it never would have worked. They clearly don't care about these older characters anymore.
I guess not.
But they, from my opinion, it seems like they knew that it would never have worked with Han Solo, so they just chose someone they didn't care about and felt like it would have worked.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that seems pretty transparent to me. It's really, really, really just surprising that they took it that far. I don't know how many pansexuals there are out there. I had heard the term before the movie came out, but I wasn't aware that, it included having, attraction to kitchen appliances and stuff like that. So I was very disappointed by their choice with
I agree.
this long developed character.
I agree. Like, where are you getting that from, and why are you doing it?
Yeah. So you're a longtime fan of Star Wars. You're not happy with the direction that Disney has taken it, and I would really consider you a long-time boycotter, to tell you the truth. You've been boycotting it far longer than I have. If you just decided that you don't like the side stories like Rogue One and Solo and stuff like that. I watched Rogue One. I won't say I was happy with it. I was very disappointed. It seems like, well, first off, I didn't want to see a movie where everyone died. That was just a downer for me, and I don't think that.
See, I don't even care because I don't care about those characters or anything that's going on. The interesting thing about me, it could sound like I'm jumping to a conclusion, but I don't feel I knew before seeing the movie I'm not going to be interested in this. I just knew. Like, I would be stunned, totally surprised if I saw the movie and wound up falling in love with it. My intuition was telling me that's not going to happen, so I avoided it. So the fact that everybody dies, I really don't care.
Well, I think around the time I saw that, I was still watching AMC Movie Talk or Collider or whatever they were at the time. And, I fell for John Campea and...
I never fell for John Campea.
Christian Harloff. I mean, they mentioned that there was a novel that went with the book, and you're supposed to read... It's a prequel to the... I'm sorry, a novel with the movie. The novel was a prequel to the movie, so I figured I'd read the novel and then watch the movie. And, I was
You
still...
read the novel?
Yes, I did.
Oh, how was it? This is an aside.
It was better than the movie, probably.
Okay, well, sorry for interrupting. Go on.
You could... Reading the novel, you can relate to the characters. I think the only character I related to in that movie was... well, I won't say I related to him, but I liked him. Saul Guerrero.
Don't know who that is and don't care.
He was Forrest Whitaker.
Oh, okay, the guy in the box.
Save the rebellion.
Yeah, he's like walking around in like a safe.
Save the dream.
Yeah.
You came to kill me.
Yeah, okay.
That guy, right?
Yeah, that's one of the few scenes I saw.
And he was the only likable character you saw, right?
I guess.
Well, interesting. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Interesting character. I found him interesting, and they killed him right away. So yeah, I was disappointed. I'm disappointed with that, but I didn't boycott at that time. I didn't boycott until after The Last Jedi. And I would classify you as someone who's, as a Star Wars fan, and not interested in watching a Star Wars feature film that they're releasing in theaters. I would consider you a boycotter.
That was the first time that ever happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider you a boycotter.
I guess so. It's not like I was telling other people to go around and don't watch this film.
Right, but you don't have to.
Right.
I mean, you're not seeing it 3 or 4 times in theaters, or even once, is bad enough.
And I didn't feel like I missed anything either.
Yeah, okay. So,
and I was still looking forward to The Last Jedi, even after Rogue One, even though I wasn't interested whatsoever in that. I just felt like I could ignore that stuff and didn't care about it.
Now, here's why I would consider you a boycotter. Because if you were in that same situation after The Force Awakens, okay, you didn't watch, let's say everything went as it did, you didn't watch Rogue One. Let's say they were releasing Star Wars: The Clone Wars back then.
Yeah.
Would you have watched it?
The Clone Wars?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
That's why I would consider you a boycotter of that film.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as a boycotter, you don't have to boycott everything Star Wars. Just, you have to pick something and say, this is a waste of my time. I don't like what I see here. I'm not watching it.
Okay, well, yes, that's what happened with me.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess, unless you have more to say on that subject in general, I'll move on.
I do not.
Okay, I'll move on to Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because I'm guessing you were a fan of that cartoon show.
I think ultimately, yeah, even though there were a good percentage of episodes I frankly thought were dumb. Stuff involving like the Zillo Beast and anything involving Mortis I didn't like. But when it just stuck to what you would expect from the Clone Wars, basically battles and war, such as Second Geonosis and the Battle of Umbara, yeah, I really liked that. That's the type of stuff I was into. When the Clone Wars delivered on that, and even Ryloth, that was really good stuff.
Yeah, it was. It was. Now, when you say Second Geonosis, I'm sort of mixed up on
the
first one and the second.
You're mixed up on the battles of Geonosis? Go on.
I'm mixed up, I guess, on what you meant, because I know they have like several episodes where it's like different.
The second battle of Geonosis, the actual event in the Star Wars canon,
right? Okay,
not the first battle.
Because on these big battles like Christoph,
like the second battle. The second episode of the second battle of Geonosis.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was a really, really, really good battle.
That's
when they captured Wat Tambor, right?
Yes, it was during that. I didn't like the stuff involving the Geonosian Queen, which kind of that was after the battle, if I recall.
Right, little Poggle, right?
Yeah, I wasn't too keen. Like I don't like that type of cute stuff when it tries to do stuff like that.
Like Stinky.
Oh, that's terrible. That's like the worst. That's the worst. Whenever they try to do anything cute like that, I guess to appeal to very, very young children, perhaps, like maybe in the 5, 6 range.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it. Of course, I'm not that demographic. I'm a grown man. And I didn't enjoy it whenever they tried to explain the Force.
Oh, so that's your problem with Mortis, then?
Oh, definitely. And when they tried to do weird things like Night Sisters, turn this magical stuff, that's just not... never liked that type of thing with Star Wars.
When the Night Sisters were first, realized into a thing, they weren't the best addition to Star Wars, but I think they lowered their value in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. They become something they weren't, and I don't think they've been well refined or defined in the Clone Wars in the prequels in general, in the prequel era. There was never anything about Darth Maul or Zabrax having anything to do with Dathomir or nothing like that. They were basically your quintessential witches without pointy hats or anything.
Right.
They were sort of primitive witches that used the Force differently than Jedi and Sith did, but not so differently.
That's interesting. Like I could get behind that. It's like the I don't believe the Jedi or Sith should have a monopoly on the Force. So
right,
I can. Right. It's a big galaxy out there. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But I didn't like what I saw in the Clone Wars with them, though. Right. I also didn't like anything involving Mandalorians in the Clone Wars because that was against the way I understood Mandalorians worked fundamentally.
Right, yeah. It used to be Mandalorians were a special, extinct almost race.
Yes. I didn't believe they had a blonde queen in a thriving world. And
called Mandalore, right.
Yes.
No, they were a race of people that challenged the Jedi or the Republic at some point, and they were wiped out. So when you see this guy going around in Mandalorian armor, he's still, the accumulation of that whole group of people, he's really special at that point.
Yes.
Now not only is he a clone, but he's got an entire planet to fall back on.
Yeah. So getting back to the point, there are many things in Star Wars Clone Wars that I don't approve of, that I don't care for, but generally speaking, I do like that cartoon show.
Before I ask you about some of the stuff you liked about it, let me ask you about one thing you probably didn't like. Darth Maul. What do you think about what they did with him?
I would have left Darth Maul alone. I think Darth Maul, in my head canon, died in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Got chopped in half, fell down a hole. That's going to kill most people. I think there are a lot of things in that show that I try to ignore.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, they're so bad, I try to just ignore them. But there are also many things, like I said, the battles that I really, really liked.
Yeah.
Darth Maul, no, I didn't approve of that. I would leave that character alone. I know he's popular, but you fanboys out there, try to, realize what you need to consider is, what's good for fiction, not just what's good to get you off. You know what I mean? Like, you want to see Darth Maul come back, that's just not in my mind, good for fiction. That character was meant to die. He was killed. That was great, because when you looked at the original trilogy, these villains they had were living all throughout the thing, pretty much, except for, I guess, Tarkin.
Right.
But Darth Vader was always around, so I thought I don't think I was expecting Darth Maul to die in the Phantom Menace when I first saw it, so it was a shocker.
Yeah, I can't really remember if I expected it or not.
I thought it was great, though, and I do think Darth Maul is a really awesome character, but I like Boba Fett.
Less awesome when he comes back, though.
Yes, yeah, you got to realize that less is more with characters like that, you know? And otherwise, you wind up watering them down.
Right.
And so, no, I did not like Darth Maul coming back. It's one of the things I try to ignore.
Yeah, I disagree with his resurrection, or whatever you want to call it, mainly on the fact that they didn't do the character justice. I mean, if you want to make him this resurrected robot-minded, don't resurrect him to be like the same guy as he is before with some baggage with Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know? He has to be changed. He has to be someone who is like the living dead at that point. And he's, you know, basically a computerized mind running some biological, you know.
I'm going to be frank, even that to me is the dumb idea. Now, my problem with bringing Darth Maul back is it just shouldn't happen.
After what I saw them do with Grievous in Episode 3 and before, then I'm like, okay, you can explain that, though, you know?
Yeah.
If you really want to see this guy's face again.
Yeah, but that's General Grievous's thing, you know? That's what makes him interesting and him cool.
I hear you, but I'm just saying this is the only way you could explain it to me where I would buy it, maybe, you know? General Grievous clearly was not the same guy before as he was after his accident.
Clearly not.
And Darth Maul, yes, he had robot legs, but eventually he was able to look past those and get on with his hatred for Obi-Wan and everyone else, you know. But anyway, we've gotten past all the stuff you hated about that show.
More or less, yeah.
What did you like so much about it?
Well, I already said the battles I thought were really good.
Well, let's get into some specifics.
Okay, let me think. I like some of the new characters it introduced, like Admiral Trench. I thought was really cool. I liked what they did with Wat Tambor. I like how they expanded on him. I like how they the Kaminoans. I like what they did with them and explained a lot about them, because I think, to tell you the truth, I can't speak for most people, but I walked out of Episode 2 not knowing that they were bad, per se. I didn't know that they were in on Darth Sidious's plan.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that went over my head, but I think it was fascinating that 14 or so years later, I'm watching the show and they explain that, no, these guys were in on the plot the whole time, which actually made perfect sense.
Right.
I'm like, wow, that was actually pretty... I was stunned. You know, as a Star Wars fan, I had a perception of these characters, and then it turned it completely on its head. But what I thought was really cool is it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
I was just like, you not... And I was paying attention, because I was really into those films, and I would watch them a lot.
Right.
So it's not like something went... It was really masterful storytelling, I thought.
Yeah.
And I like that. Let me see, what other specific things did I like? I love the focus on the clones, because that's a lot of stuff you missed in the Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith films. So I liked the focus on the clones. I liked seeing them as characters. Even if they, you know, died or... weren't always there. It's like whenever Fives would appear or something, it's like, oh, it's these guys again.
Right.
Or Waxer and Boyle.
Right, right.
Okay, so I like the battles. I like the focus on the clones. I like the expansion of the enemies. Because that's another thing I think that... I mean, Lucas did great with Grievous, but when it came to the Separatists, I think... he could have done more, but there wasn't a lot of space. You'd have to change things a lot. Another thing I like, too, speaking of that, is Bonteri, how it showed a different...
Bonteri.
Yeah, a different side to the Separatists, because really, Lucas only really focused on the corrupt Separatists, which were the Separatist Council, like Sand Hill and
people were supposed to be bad guys.
Yeah, the businessmen, these big banks and the corporate guilds.
Yeah.
It did not focus on really the bulk of the Separatists, which were the planets in the Republic that were feeling disenfranchised because the Republic was frankly corrupt. That's a really complex and good story. I don't even think the cartoon show went into this as much as it should have. It was too busy being your typical kids' cartoon. Separatists are bad. Yeah. But I did really love it when it took the time to tell you that, no, the Separatists aren't necessarily really any worse than the Republic. Lucas could have done a lot more with that. The cartoon could have done a lot more with that, but when the rare time it hit on it, I thought that was really good because, it showed that their planet Raxus wasn't a bad planet. It was, the Senate liked Count Dooku,
right?
And it looked like they were, pretty.
And
decent
he seemed
people.
Actually, when he was in the Senate and doing,
he seemed fair.
He seemed like a fair guy.
Which gives you great layers to Count Dooku.
Right.
Because another thing, too, Count Dooku was bad, yes, but bad with a good reason.
Bad with a good reason, and he didn't put out publicly a bad
No, he didn't,
persona.
which is really, really creative for a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
But the funny thing, too, is this is like a thing I'm not positive on. It has to be, though. It's public knowledge that he's a Sith Lord. The Jedi definitely know it.
Right. It's probably public knowledge, I would think.
Which really adds a lot more layers to Star Wars. See, this is the type of thing that, had I been executive producer or writer or something, this type of stuff that I would have gone into. A lot of untapped potential there, but it did tap some of the potential there was so much stuff. Like, a lot of stuff Lucas missed, a lot of stuff the cartoon missed, but the cartoon did do some stuff, go into some of these nuances of Star Wars a bit. That's the thing I liked most about it. Great battles and great expanding of the lore, the characters of Star Wars that, frankly, Lucas just didn't have enough time to do all that, along with everything he wanted to do in his prequel films.
Does that disappoint you about the films at all? That, he focused more on Anakin, Padme, Obi-Wan than he did on what the clones were doing out there on the Outer Rim or whatever?
His universe, I don't know, I think it's just the state of the universe and also the fact that Star Wars had been going on prior to the prequels. His universe was so vast. And
they're shrinking it down now, it seems like.
Oh, definitely. And, you don't want to lose people, because not everybody is as big a geek as I am, who wants to know how you butter the bread and stuff like that. Even though there is a great story to tell with the Separatists not being so bad that I think anybody could relate to, but I think he tried to keep it centered on he didn't want to lose the audience and all this peripheral stuff, so he kept it centered on the basic story of Anakin Skywalker. You know what I'm really disappointed in?
What?
More so the cartoon show. More so the Genndy Tartakovsky cartoon show and the Clone Wars.
That's the Genndy Tartakovsky is the 3 minutes.
Yeah, that is
episodes.
Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and what we're talking about here is Star Wars Clone Wars.
Right.
I'm disappointed more so in those things, and also Star Wars Republic. I'm more disappointed in the the expanded media. I forgot. Yeah. I'm not sure the term I'm thinking of right now. They should have gone more into that. I do think I'm kind of disappointed a bit in everything, but I care enough, I love it enough to be disappointed. Like, there's so much going on here that you could tap into that I understand you can't do it all. But with all this media Star Wars that's going around, and I think the cartoon show should have done it, the comics should have done it more, the book should have done it more.
Right. It seems to me that the comics and everything that were going on at the time that George Lucas was doing the prequels were taking pretty much his
same old
pattern
thing
for what he was doing in the movies, instead of expanding as much as they could have on what he left out of the movies. It's weird.
That's the mistake. That's the mistake. And that's why I'm kind of more disappointed in this peripheral media.
Yeah.
Because, man, I would have been gobbling that stuff up.
Right.
You know what I mean? I understand the movies, you don't want to lose people and all this lake of geekiness, which is great you have that.
Yeah.
So I understand him sticking with Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan and telling this story that most people should be able to understand and relate to.
What do you think of Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka personally? What do you think of them personally?
Oh, those are like, barring Ahsoka, those are like my favorite Star Wars characters, pretty much.
Uh-huh.
My favorite Star Wars character is Anakin Skywalker, all the way through. I don't mean this version of Anakin or that version of Anakin.
It's just one character.
One character to me. And
gotcha.
And it's
There's
fun.
no Anakin Vader separation.
Not for me, no. And it's fun to watch the character go from one version to another. And it's fun to watch the nuances. If you're really eagle-eyed, it's fun to watch the nuances that aren't totally spelled out to you, that this guy was kind of always like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, even when you watch, like, Hayden Christensen, Anakin, and I'm not talking about the temper tantrums.
I actually thought the temper tantrums made him seem more like
Oh,
Vader
definitely.
than...
Definitely. But it's like, this guy was I'm not even talking about the in-your-face stuff, I mean. Just maybe some of the mannerisms.
Right.
Like, he doesn't have to say most impressive for me to, like, think that. It's like some of the little
When you
things.
see him watching the world and trying to understand it, you kind of see him just... Not so much when he's talking, in just regular everyday speech to, like, whoever... But when, things are happening around him, he's just sort of taking it in.
That's the type of thing Darth Vader would do on a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone on the bridge is kind of watching for what his reaction is going to be, but he's just there, and he's watching space and looking at this little ship go across the, forward viewport and everything.
And that's the same thing as when he's with Padme. He's like, I'm sorry. Like, after he kissed her, he's kind of watching the lake.
Right.
Similar mannerisms. And, it's, it's understandable, really. A lot of people, because I think they don't see everything, because I think a lot goes over their head, perhaps because of George Lucas's maybe an inability at directing. But, I mean, when you do watch this, and I don't think I'm just putting it together, it's really understandable why Anakin became who he became.
Right.
I mean, and it was all like the Senate is corrupt, the Republic's not agreeing on anything, there's all this trouble. He says, well, maybe they should just be made to do it. And eventually that's who he becomes.
I was never one of the people who thought that he fell to the dark side too fast.
Oh, I don't think so, no.
I thought he was falling ever since Episode 2, possibly sometime
Probably
even back in
before
Episode
that.
1. Yeah.
So about the character, Anakin's my favorite, and you want to ask me about my second favorite Star Wars character?
Sure.
It was probably Finn before The Last Jedi, maybe, but now I'm probably going to go back to Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's a great character.
Yeah, Obi-Wan. And, I like Padme too. Ahsoka, she's okay.
She's okay?
If it was me and if it was writing it, I'm probably going to get heel points with people. If it was me and I was like writing that cartoon, she wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But I
gotta give them props for getting the character so popular.
Yeah, they got her over.
It's
definitely.
just that. How do I say this? Over the course of somewhere in between Episode 2 and Episode 3, she grew up over 4 or 5 or whatever, however many seasons they went. And now, before Episode 3 happens, she's coming back into it with this new show. And she looks far older. I'm just like, how much... I thought there was 3 years between 2 and 3.
I do believe that is the case.
It seems like 10 years worth of stuff has happened,
Yeah, Ahsoka, I don't begrudge her. Now, when she first came along, she seemed like another one of these cute things for the kiddies, like an Ewok. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when Star Wars decides to get cute.
Yeah.
And, that was never really a good idea, usually.
Right.
And I was like, oh... and it's like... I got used to her being around, and I do think she filled a position that Star Wars kind of weirdly never filled, which was just that female Jedi that was around.
That's true.
You know?
I'm just looking at Anakin. I'm like, he's going to be 43 before he becomes Darth Vader. You know? That's what I'm looking at. It's just like,
so you're
where's
looking
the
at
time?
how she's messing up the timeline.
Where's the time coming from?
I'm still just, my understanding is it's a 3-year gap between 2 and 3, which is kind of ridiculous.
She looks like she's grown 10 years.
She
If you saw her in the trailer, I'm sure you did.
I saw that, yeah.
At least 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, maybe they're just pushing back the time, which is kind of a weird thought to me, but I guess they can do that.
Yeah. I mean,
it's to tell you the honest truth, I don't think the Clone Wars should be a 3-year affair. I think that's, for writing, I don't think that's a good idea.
I think he sort of, George sort of wrote it to where it almost had to be. Hayden Christensen's only going to age so much, right?
Yeah.
And he made Anakin 9 years old to begin with, and that was, I never liked that. And then he gets Hayden Christensen to pick up where Jake Lloyd's left off, kind of.
Yeah.
10 years later. He had to be 10 years older because Hayden Christensen is so much older than Jake Lloyd was.
Right.
But Hayden Christensen is not 10 years older than Hayden Christensen. By the time Episode 3 comes out, he looks older, he looks bigger, but not that much.
True. But I could accept that he's 27 or something like that. You know what I mean?
You also have to consider the fact that him and Padme are carrying on this secret relationship all this time. And 3 years is pushing it for something like that. You've got a war going on, which, helps.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, it's hard. There are so many wires that need to connect here with something as vast as Star Wars, with so many different people working on it. These people, I know George Lucas had a lot to do with Clone Wars. Yeah. But still, there are a lot of other people involved here. It's hard to link everything up perfectly. I can understand that.
It's a job.
Yeah, but Ahsoka's okay. I mean, she grew on me over time. I understand why people like her, and I think, I understand having a girl Jedi around, because Star Wars really didn't have that at the time. I'm
going to surprise you maybe and say that I like her.
Oh, yeah, I don't dislike Ahsoka.
I mean, I did dislike her the first, little bit.
But I can tell you this, for better or worse, if somehow I went through a time warp and somehow I wound up being the producer of that show, she still probably wouldn't exist.
Same here.
But I don't dislike her. I don't dislike that she's around. I understand why her fans like her, and I don't mean any ill will towards Ahsoka, other than I would probably erase her if I could.
I'm not really sure how much of my audience likes her. I just know that she's very popular, and popular with people that around my age, my generation, which is surprising.
Yeah,
I mean, really
surprising.
popular with a lot of them. So I'm not sure exactly. My audience never really says too much about Ahsoka, at least not to me.
Well, there's so much to say about Star Wars. How often do you talk about the Clone Wars cartoon?
Haven't been.
See? That's probably why they haven't said anything.
Right. This is the first time. So everybody, you get your opportunity to say as much about Ahsoka as you want to down in the comments section. So we're going to transition from Ahsoka on into this new trailer that aired. So this is going to be the meat of the video, I hope.
I don't think so, because there's not a lot to say about it, really. So
there's not a lot to say, but there is a lot to speculate about.
Okay.
And I'm all for speculation. I mean,
that's fine.
What did you think about it?
Exactly what I said. I was excited when I found out. I was just browsing Twitter one day, and I see it trending on Twitter. That's how I found out about it. What was it? Clone Wars saved, hashtag Clone Wars saved, I think. So I checked it out, and I was like, wow, this cartoon's coming back. I was in good spirits about it. I was just in good spirits that it was coming back. Now, what did I actually think of the trailer? But I can't say too much about it, because it's one of those sparse trailers that just kind of gives the message across, like, yeah, they're bringing Clone Wars back, but you're not really telling me much more beyond that.
Yeah.
So I thought the trailer was okay.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense to bring Ahsoka back if you're going to bring back Clone Wars.
I guess so. You might as well, you know?
Yeah. To make it seem like you're really bringing something back. You know?
Right, right. And because you need all the help you can get.
Yeah.
I hate to sound like a hater just for the sake of being a hater, you know? And I know a lot of people, even on they've been very negative against Disney Star Wars in recent months. A lot of them maybe have been saying that it's a good idea to bring Star Wars: The Clone Wars back. And I just can't get there. And I don't want to sound like I'm doing this just for the sake of hating Star Wars because I hate Disney Star Wars. It's just... It seems to me, I'm just going to go with speculation and try not to be overly confident about what I'm saying. It just seems to me that they threw together a really cheaply done trailer. I mean, because, let me put this another way. If Solo hadn't flopped, I have to wonder if we would have been getting this.
That's,
you know what I'm saying?
That's an interesting thing to wonder. And yeah, I'm sure the trailer had to be, they wanted to release the news by Comic-Con, which is currently going on as we're making this video. And so they probably wanted to get the news out there by Comic-Con. That's maybe why the trailer isn't, superb.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is, if you had planned this months and months ahead of time, why didn't you get a great trailer together for Comic-Con?
Yeah, it could be a spur-of-the-moment thing. Here's a Star Wars thing that actually was successful. The consensus is that it was a good cartoon, and I'm sure it made a lot of money for Lucas. Sold a lot of toys, had a lot of ratings. I mean, it was... This is a whole other subject, the state of action cartoons, but I would say it was the best action cartoon, the best current action cartoon at its time.
And probably our time as well.
Yeah, I know. So action cartoons really blow now, but that's a completely different, or they're barely there, but that's a completely different discussion. So I think that's a consensus too, that it was a really great action cartoon show. Most people can agree it was good, so they're doing that because it's something that the Star Wars fans can agree on would be cool to see again, maybe.
Right. And here's another thing I was considering when I found out about this. Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the first one. I'm gonna have to start calling it that now, or something to distinguish the two. The first one, pretty much Disney ended it as soon as they bought Lucasfilm, right? It's like didn't last very long.
The first one? Oh, you mean the first? I thought you were
I'm
talking about the Genndy Tartakovsky.
No, not that.
You're talking about
Let's just forget Genndy Tartakovsky's stuff exists for now.
Okay.
It didn't last too much after Disney bought Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was Disney that ended that because they're like, we're ending everything.
Yeah.
And that was just along with the stuff they were ending. So, yeah.
What I'm interested is how long they kept it on. Was it a year? Was it 2 years?
You mean just on the air on Cartoon Network?
Well, how long they kept making new ones?
Oh, I don't know. It wasn't 2 years. It wasn't that. Because
maybe
I remember that was maybe.
So
there was like one more season.
Yeah, what I remember of it is they cut the last season extremely short. It was very abbreviated. It just kind of ended.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember that was kind of a bummer,
Yeah. So what I'm looking at is Disney's got this great thing that George Lucas started going. They get in there, they end it, and then they start Rebels.
Yeah, Rebels is something, and then one of those other things I wasn't at all interested in watching, so I didn't.
Right.
Whenever I did see bits and pieces of it, or whatever I learned about it, like a cool, sassy Mandalorian girl's in it that does graffiti or something,
right.
I know that I don't want to watch that. You know what I mean? So everything I knew or found out about it, or every little bit I saw of it, just reinforced I don't want anything to do with this show, so you can call me a boy. Yeah, I will go out on a limb and say I'm a boycotter of Rebels. I really didn't like that. I didn't like what I saw of it, so I didn't watch it.
For very long.
Rogue One, yeah, I didn't like it, but it was kind of more disinterested. Rebels, I just, no. Wasn't going to watch something like that.
What I want people in my audience to consider here is...
We're going to get another Rebels with this Clone Wars?
Basically, I mean, what you have is the difference between George Lucas having him and not having him. Rebels shows basically what Disney is capable of or willing to spend. You know, you compare any episode of Rebels to any episode of the Clone Wars, and the Clone Wars was all hustle bustle in the background. They had stuff going on just like the prequels did, you know.
George Lucas is into that type of little inconsequential background characters.
Right, but it made a
huge... They do add to the atmosphere.
It made a huge difference. You had crowds and crowds and crowds of people and ships going places, you know?
Yeah.
And Rebels, it was like you get this little ragtag team together. Their home base is like... I watched the first season, didn't watch any of the rest of it. But their home base seemed to be like this grassland plains area, you know... and they got a little ship, and sometimes they'll get together with a little rebel fleet, you know, and you'll see some commanders. But at least in the first season, there didn't seem to be too much of that. Eventually, you know, Vader got involved. I didn't watch too much of that. Thrawn got involved. I didn't watch any of that. It just seemed like there wasn't much going on in Rebels, and it seemed like they were doing that because Disney didn't want to spend the type of money that George Lucas was spending on it, you know. And so now Disney has this much acclaimed, highly missed name, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, that George Lucas basically developed into a great thing. And I'm not so convinced that Disney is willing to spend what George Lucas spent on it.
Well, Disney's going to have to do something to right the ship here, and I'm thinking that maybe this Clone Wars is the first step, so they're going to have to up their game, and they should know they're going to have to up their game from here on out. They can't keep doing whatever they've been doing with Star Wars.
But how do they do
and
that?
Be successful. How do they do that? Well, take a look at, they have a massive template with the first Clone Wars cartoon show. You know, the George Lucas Clone Wars cartoon show. The template's already there. People want more of that, you know, apparently.
What's your feelings toward what they're going to do? I mean, because you've seen people complain about them for 7 months now. And
yeah.
To tell the truth, people have been complaining about them ever since The Force Awakens. But we'll just talk about the major backlash that is relevant and that is unlike any other backlash that Star Wars has experienced before. You've seen people complain about them for 7 months, and their response has been to spit on the fans.
Yeah, but is that their response moving forward from Solo?
I don't know.
We'll have to see.
That's the interesting thing.
The Last Jedi did not lose money, is my understanding. It's a completely different situation now. The bean counters and executives have to take things seriously because this is a money loser now. It's not just, some fans don't like it. It's like they're coming up negative.
Yeah.
So you have to change course or they're just going to go down in a blaze.
It is definitely a different situation than what happened right after the Last Jedi. The Last Jedi didn't make nearly as much money as they expected it to.
Right.
So that's one thing to take into consideration. But like you said, for the first time ever, one of their movies has lost money.
Yes.
That's no joke. What I'm looking at, though, is they still have the same people. As far as I'm aware, they have the exact same people involved that have been involved all along.
Are you talking about with Star Wars in general or Rebels?
I'm talking about with Star Wars in general. But, of course, I think, the same team is going to carry over from Rebels to, I would imagine.
Didn't the same team carry over from Clone Wars to Rebels?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
But they minus George Lucas's influence.
Good point.
Whatever his influence was.
Good point, yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. We can't know at the moment. Like, we don't know where Star Wars is headed. Can it try to make things right, or is it just going to keep on with the same old crap? And even then, it's like with Star Wars in general, not just Clone Wars, because I see how you can do Clone Wars right. Like I said, that template's there. How do you make things right with Star Wars in general from here on out? That's the big question.
That's a good question. And I think Star Wars is basically, without meaning to, I'm sure they didn't mean to, stepped into, for them, uncharted territory. But really, as far as entertainment goes, the territory is very well charted. You know, comic books got there first, as far as I'm aware.
You're talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they're going to have to wipe out their continuity?
Not exactly Crisis style,
So
but
maybe
definitely retconning their own crap. They've already done it to the expanded universe, right?
Yes, they have.
And what was the thing that was different about the expanded universe?
You mean with in regards to the comics?
In regards to the entire expanded universe, just the fact that it's the expanded universe. What's the same about the expanded universe that's the same about what's going on with Star Wars right now?
Well, people complained about it. I'm not sure where you're driving.
George Lucas had no input, really.
Oh, okay. Well,
You
yes,
know?
that's true.
And so, this territory has been charted by other entertainment. It's been charted by Star Wars as well, but just it hasn't been charted by Disney Star Wars all that much.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? I don't know if it's 5, 10, 15 years down the line, is all of this stuff that wasn't George Lucas's is going to be retconned, and it's going to be all started over. I don't imagine that they're going to come out with a movie called The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi to replace it, but the credibility isn't there now. Can it really hold on for 5, 10, or 15 years?
You're right. I mean, killing Luke Skywalker, I could actually believe that, because that sounds like something someone will come along and retcon. It's kind of, a big thing, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can actually. It's a hard thing to imagine retconning your multi-million-dollar film, but it's never happened with Star Wars the movies before. But I would actually say that's probably the best thing they can do. And the funny thing is, it's like such a weird thing. Although it's like, I would retcon The Last Jedi and not necessarily The Force Awakens if it was me. But if you're gonna do that, you may as well retcon that whole thing. You know, it was a bust.
You have to retcon The Force Awakens as well. Those movies are so intertwined right now. I mean, it would just make no sense. I mean, you'd have to work off of that. You would have to explain why Luke Skywalker was missing in action for that whole movie, and it's just not worth it.
Right? Yeah.
You know, that's real estate that it's not worth treading.
Yeah. So
unfortunately,
they really crapped the bed with this one.
Yeah, they did.
Because I don't even know how you can. You can't cleanly clean this. It's going to be a dirty job.
right?
And it's going to be something that's going to mark Star Wars for the rest of Star Wars' history.
They have to work on this for as long as they keep this continuity, you know.
Yeah.
The only Star Wars that's going to have, 10 years down the line, the only Star Wars that's going to have any credibility is the George Lucas Star Wars.
You could be right. I can see that
and so,
happening.
Once that comes out and Star Wars becomes a franchise that, you know, every once in a while their movies lose money, it's not going to be a big thing to retcon their crap.
Yeah, because another thing too, George Lucas isn't going to be around forever, and he's not making these movies anymore. So
Kathleen Kennedy's not going to be around forever.
True. So, like, what's going to happen with this franchise? We'll just have to sit back and wait and see. I guess that's what we'll have to do with this Clone Wars thing too, looking at it on a smaller scale. What's going to happen? Are we going to get another Rebels, or are we going to get some real Clone Wars here?
I'm betting on another Rebels.
That's a shame if that happens.
I mean, you pretty much can't do that with Clone Wars unless you totally just rewrite the entire thing.
No.
Because Clone Wars just...
It's not about a plucky resistance fighting an evil empire. It's about a mega-scale war.
But I'm willing to bet that Disney is going to find some sort of way to cut corners as far as cost.
To their own peril. to their own peril, because you have to, Star Wars, you got to realize, they have to realize, I know they know, is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. You got to get the fans back on your side, and you're not going to do it by being cheap. You know, you got to get them back on your side, and Clone Wars is one of the few things I could see them doing that with. You know, it's one of the few things they haven't tainted, or, you know, they haven't tainted the prequels all that much. Right. You know, because they don't want to do anything with them.
Which, you know, I mean, I was disappointed when it seemed like they were, you know, going to sort of ignore the prequels at first.
I was too.
Now I'm glad, and I'm terrified that they're actually going to stop ignoring them now.
Yeah, because that area of Star Wars is still pristine. Yeah. As far as the Disney taint goes. The original trilogy's all messed up. You effed up all their characters.
I haven't been able to watch it since The Force Awakens.
I haven't been.
Or I'm sorry, The Last Jedi.
I haven't really been interested in trying too much. You know,
I've tried. I mean, The Empire Strikes Back is in my disk drive now. It's been there for months.
Yeah. So that's another thing that excites me too. We're going, which this could be very bad. We're going back to an area of Star Wars that I feel is safe to go back to, that I'm willing to go back to, and I guess maybe they're realizing that too. We have to retreat to the prequel era because we've messed up. Our sequel trilogy's a wreck. We've messed up the characters from the original trilogy.
Right.
So, the Clone Wars is. I honestly think that was the best thing they could have done. And people who hate the prequels don't necessarily hate that show a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's like something everyone can agree on, you know. So it's a wise move. Hopefully they don't mess it up, because then there's not going to be anywhere to go with Star Wars.
Yeah. I have one last question for you. Are you going to watch?
Of course. I was a fan of, the Clone Wars. I don't really have to think of that. I'm interested in watching it. I was never interested in watching Rebels. I love the characters. Again, I love Anakin, and I love Obi-Wan and Padme. Ahsoka is okay-ish. And I love Palpatine. The Rebels characters, I don't even know who they are.
Yeah. I did watch the first season of Rebels, as I mentioned before. And the one thing that stands out to me when I think of it now is I couldn't relate to any of the characters. They were all boring. All of them. Boring.
I wasn't interested in finding out anything about them, especially after I hear there's a Mandalorian, I'm going to say again, who goes around with an outfit with pink trim, with maybe butterfly stickers on it, who does graffiti. And does she rap?
Probably.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to watch that show. But, I could always depend on Anakin to be Anakin, at least I hope so.
Right.
And Obi-Wan to be Obi-Wan. At least we got the same voice actors and hopefully the same writers involved. So, yeah, I will be watching Star Wars: The Clone Wars. In general, I am looking quite forward to it. I'm not bouncing off the walls with excitement, but it was the first thing in a long while I saw that was Star Wars related that said, hey, I will actually watch this.
Yeah. Well, might as well tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me at zatswan.com. And I am the creator of the Zatswan Multiversal Guardian comic book, which you will find at zatswan.com. You could also find me at my YouTube channel, and I go by the name Neil Allen.
Okay, Neil, thanks for joining us. A pleasure having you here. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, if you're listening, you are the new rebellion.